There comes a moment in midlife when you begin to notice things. Small things. You wake up after a full night's sleep and somehow don't feel rested. You climb a flight of stairs and realize you're gripping the railing a little tighter than you used to. You catch your reflection and wonder when that person got so tired. These observations arrive quietly. They don't announce themselves as warnings. They simply accumulate until one day you find yourself asking a question you never expected to ask. Is this just what getting older feels like? What if the answer to that question is more complicated than we've been led to believe? What if much of what we attribute to aging itself actually reflects something else entirely, something far more within our influence than we imagine? This is not a story about stopping time. It is something more useful. A map of the territory between where you are and where you might yet go. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The architecture of aging well. Understanding how daily choices shape our later years. There is a question that eventually arrives in every thoughtful life. It may come during a quiet morning, or after a medical appointment, or simply while watching children play in a park. The question is not dramatic. It does not arrive with urgency or fear. It arrives quietly, almost as a matter of curiosity. What determines whether some people move through their later decades with relative ease while others encounter difficulty after difficulty? This question has occupied philosophers and physicians for millennia. The ancient Greeks wrote about it. Traditional Chinese medicine built elaborate systems around it. Modern research, with all its technological sophistication, continues to explore the same fundamental mystery. Why do aging trajectories diverge so significantly among individuals of similar chronological age? What emerges from this long inquiry is not a single answer, but a pattern of understanding. The way we age appears to be shaped by thousands of small decisions repeated over decades, decisions about movement, about food, about rest, about how we respond to difficulty, about the environments we create for ourselves. These decisions do not determine our fate in any absolute sense, but they influence its direction. This essay explores the architecture of aging well. It examines the recurring principles that appear in populations who maintain vitality into later years. It looks at what research suggests about how bodies respond to different patterns of living. And it considers how ordinary people, in ordinary circumstances, might shape their days in ways that support rather than undermine their long-term well-being. Part 1. The body's response to changing seasons. A design for adaptation. The human body evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in environments that changed constantly. Seasons turned. Temperatures fluctuated. Food availability rose and fell. The body developed sophisticated systems for responding to these changes, systems that allowed survival through lean times and recovery during periods of abundance. These adaptive systems remain with us. When cold weather arrives, blood vessels near the skin narrow in a process called vasoconstriction. This is the body conserving heat by reducing blood flow to the surface, keeping warmth deeper where vital organs reside. When summer heat arrives, those same vessels widen, releasing heat to cool the body. These responses are automatic, elegant, and largely invisible to conscious awareness. What has changed is not the body but the environment. Modern humans spend most of their time in controlled climates. We heat our homes in winter and cool them in summer. We move between environments that barely resemble the conditions our bodies evolved to navigate. And while this comfort brings genuine benefits, it also means the body's adaptive systems are less frequently engaged, less practiced, less resilient when genuine challenges arise. The cumulative nature of physical change. Biological systems respond to patterns, not incidents. A single day of poor eating does not determine health outcomes. One afternoon of sitting does not create cardiovascular disease. A night of poor sleep does not fundamentally alter cognitive function. What matters is the pattern repeated over months and years. This principle operates at multiple levels simultaneously. At the cellular level, structures accumulate damage from normal metabolic processes, damage that repair systems typically address. Over time, if repair systems are overwhelmed or undersupported, damage accumulates faster than it can be fixed. At the tissue level, repeated strain patterns shape how structures develop and maintain themselves. At the system level, organs adapt to the demands placed upon them, becoming more efficient at whatever tasks they regularly perform. Understanding this cumulative nature of physical change carries both sobering and encouraging implications. The sobering part: bodies do not forget. Years of sedentary habits create adaptations that make movement more difficult. Years of poor nutrition create metabolic patterns that resist change. The encouraging part: bodies also do not stop adapting. Positive changes, consistently applied, gradually reshape tissues and systems toward healthier patterns. The body remains plastic, responsive, capable of change at any age. Individual variation in aging trajectories. Anyone who has attended a high school reunion has observed the striking variation in how people age. Some classmates appear nearly unchanged after decades. Others seem to have aged more rapidly, carrying burdens that time has etched into their features and frames. This variation reflects multiple factors. Genetics play a role. Certain gene variants appear more frequently in populations who live exceptionally long lives. Early life conditions shape development in ways that influence later health. Random events, illnesses, injuries, life circumstances redirect trajectories in unpredictable ways. But between genetics and randomness lies a vast territory of influence. This territory includes the patterns of daily life: how we move, what we eat, how we rest, how we respond to stress, who we spend time with, what we do with our days. These factors do not determine outcomes with precision, but they shift probabilities. They create conditions in which health is more likely to flourish or more likely to struggle. Part 2. The movement continuum. Why stillness costs more than we realize. The human body was designed for regular, varied movement. Muscles evolved to contract and relax through full ranges of motion. Joints developed to bear weight and change position frequently. The cardiovascular system expects periodic increases in demand that strengthen its components. Even at the cellular level, movement creates signals that regulate metabolism, repair, and maintenance. Prolonged stillness disrupts these expectations. When muscles remain inactive for hours, they receive fewer signals to maintain their structure. Blood flow slows in dependent areas, particularly the legs, where gravity works against circulation. Metabolic processes shift towards storage rather than utilization. The entire system begins adapting to a sedentary state, adaptations that make movement progressively more difficult and less appealing. This process operates below conscious awareness. No single hour of sitting announces itself as harmful, but over months and years, the accumulated effects become impossible to ignore. Muscles weaken, joints stiffen, balance degrades, stamina diminishes. The body becomes less capable of the very movements that would maintain its function. Circulation as a central concern. Among the many systems affected by movement patterns, circulation deserves particular attention. Blood delivers oxygen and nutrients to every cell while removing waste products. It carries immune cells that defend against infection. It transports hormones that coordinate activity across distant organs. Effective circulation underpins virtually every aspect of health. Movement supports circulation in ways the heart alone cannot accomplish. When leg muscles contract during walking, they compress the deep veins running through them, pushing blood upward against gravity. One-way valves in these veins prevent backflow, so each muscle contraction propels blood a little closer to the heart. This muscle pump mechanism does what the heart cannot do from its central location. It actively moves blood through the extremities. When movement ceases for extended periods, this auxiliary pump stops working. Blood pools in the legs. Fluid may leak from vessels into surrounding tissues, causing swelling. The blood itself becomes more stagnant, its components more likely to aggregate. In some cases, this stagnation can lead to clot formation, a risk that increases with age as vessel walls naturally lose some of their youthful elasticity. The solution is not dramatic exercise, but regular interruption of stillness. Standing up every hour, even for a few minutes, reactivates the muscle pump. Walking to another room, climbing a flight of stairs, performing simple leg movements while seated, all these small actions maintain circulation in ways that prolonged sitting cannot. Movement quality versus quantity. Discussions of physical activity often focus on quantity. Minutes per week, steps per day, sessions per month. These metrics have value, but they capture only part of the movement story. Quality matters as well, how we move, not just how much. Movement quality encompasses several dimensions. Range of motion matters. Do joints experience their full available movement or only limited arcs? Load matters. Do bones and muscles bear weight that stimulates maintenance? Variety matters. Does movement engage different patterns or repeat the same few? Awareness matters. Is movement performed with attention or mindlessly? Consider what happens when someone walks regularly but always on flat, predictable surfaces. This walking provides cardiovascular benefit and maintains basic walking ability. But it does little for balance, which requires uneven surfaces and unexpected challenges. It does little for the subtle joint movements involved in navigating obstacles. It does little for the rapid adjustments needed to prevent a fall. Consider someone who performs strengthening exercises but only in controlled gym equipment. This strengthens specific muscles through specific ranges, but may not translate to real-world movements that require coordination across multiple joints and muscle groups. The strength exists but remains inaccessible when needed for daily activities. The ideal movement pattern includes variety, walking on different surfaces, reaching in different directions, lifting objects of different shapes and weights, changing positions frequently throughout the day. This variety maintains the body's capacity to handle the unpredictable demands of real life. Practical movement throughout the day. For those who wonder how to implement these principles, the answer lies in small, sustainable practices woven into existing routines. Morning offers an opportunity to assess how the body feels after sleep. Gentle stretching upon waking, reaching arms overhead, rolling shoulders, circling ankles, signals joints and muscles that the day has begun. These movements need not be elaborate. The goal is simply to move each major joint through its available range. Throughout the day, the principle of position changes deserves attention. No single position, however comfortable, should be maintained for hours. The body thrives on variety. Sitting, standing, walking, reclining, each in appropriate measure. Setting a gentle reminder to stand and stretch each hour interrupts the stillness that accumulates unnoticed. Daily tasks can become movement opportunities. Phone conversations conducted while standing and pacing. Television watched while performing gentle stretches. Meals followed by a short walk, even if only around the home. These small accumulations create movement throughout the day without requiring dedicated exercise sessions. Evening offers a chance to release the day's accumulated tension. Gentle movements that emphasize relaxation rather than effort, slow circles, easy stretches, deliberate breathing, signal the nervous system that activity can subside and rest can begin. Part 3. The body's response to what we consume. Beyond calories. The information in food. The conventional view of eating focuses on calories, units of energy that the body either uses or stores. This perspective, while not incorrect, captures only part of what happens when we eat. Food also carries information that cells interpret and respond to. Consider what happens when someone eats a meal rich in colorful vegetables. Those vegetables contain compounds called phytonutrients, substances plants produce to protect themselves from threats like insects, UV radiation, or disease. When consumed, these compounds interact with human biology in complex ways. Some activate cellular defense systems. Others reduce inflammatory responses. Some influence gene expression, turning certain genes toward greater activity and others toward less. Consider a meal high in refined carbohydrates and industrial fats. This food triggers different responses. Rapid spikes in blood glucose. Insulin surges to manage the glucose. Inflammatory cascades as the body processes unfamiliar fat configurations. The cells receive different information, signals of abundance followed by signals of stress. Over time, these repeated signals shape how cells behave. Systems exposed regularly to protective compounds become more resilient. Systems exposed regularly to inflammatory triggers become more reactive. The body adapts to the patterns presented to it, for better or worse. The winter effect on food choices. Seasonal changes influence eating patterns in ways that operate below conscious awareness. Cold weather triggers ancient biological programs that associate winter with scarcity. The body becomes more efficient at storing energy from food, preparing for lean times that in modern environments never arrive. This biological readiness combines with environmental factors. Fresh produce may seem less appealing when fields lie dormant. Warming foods, stews, roast, baked dishes dominate winter menus. Celebrations cluster in the colder months, bringing rich foods and treats that appear less frequently in summer. The result is a pattern that many people recognize but struggle to address. Winter eating that differs significantly from summer eating, with more emphasis on dense foods and less on fresh vegetables. This pattern, repeated annually, contributes to weight changes and metabolic shifts that accumulate across years. Strategic food choices for long-term health. Research suggests certain food patterns appear consistently among populations who maintain health into later years. These patterns share common features worth considering. Color variety emerges as a simple but powerful principle. Different colored plant foods contain different protective compounds. Red tomatoes provide lycopene, associated with prostate and cardiovascular health. Orange sweet potatoes offer beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A as needed. Dark leafy greens deliver magnesium, folate, and numerous phytonutrients. Purple grapes contain anthocyanins linked to vascular health. The practical application. Meals that include multiple colors naturally diversify protective compound intake. A single meal might include tomatoes, leafy greens, and sweet potatoes, 3 colors, 3 families of beneficial compounds. This approach requires no detailed knowledge of specific nutrients, only attention to visual variety. Protein distribution throughout the day supports muscle maintenance. Muscle tissue constantly breaks down and rebuilds. Adequate protein intake provides the building blocks for this rebuilding. Spreading protein across meals, rather than consuming most at dinner, appears to support more effective muscle maintenance than concentrating intake in a single large serving. For those eating traditional patterns, this might mean including eggs or yogurt at breakfast, fish or legumes at lunch, and a moderate portion of meat or plant protein at dinner. The total protein may not change, but its distribution supports the body's limited capacity to use protein at any one time. Fat quality matters more than fat quantity for most people. Industrial fats, partially hydrogenated oils, highly processed seed oils appear to promote inflammatory responses that undermine health over time. Fats from whole food sources, olive oil, nuts, avocados, fatty fish, provide essential fatty acids and support normal inflammatory regulation. The shift from industrial to whole food fats requires attention to food preparation methods and ingredient choices, not calorie counting. Cooking with olive oil rather than vegetable oil blends. Choosing whole nuts rather than snacks made with nut flours and industrial fats. Including fish occasionally as a protein source. Carbohydrate complexity influences how the body responds to this essential fuel source. Simple carbohydrates, refined grains, sugars, concentrated sweeteners, enter the bloodstream rapidly, triggering insulin responses that may become dysregulated with age. Complex carbohydrates, whole grains, legumes, vegetables, release glucose more gradually, providing sustained energy without sharp insulin spikes. The shift toward complexity does not require eliminating all simple carbohydrates, but rather making them occasional rather than daily. White rice gives way to brown rice occasionally. White bread becomes an exception rather than a staple. Sugary treats remain treats rather than daily occurrences. The overlooked importance of hydration. Among nutritional factors affecting health, few receive less attention than water intake. This oversight reflects the peculiar invisibility of mild dehydration. It produces no dramatic symptoms, only a gradual decline in function that goes unnoticed. Water serves functions throughout the body that become apparent only when deficient. It maintains blood volume, allowing efficient circulation. It lubricates joints, reducing friction during movement. It supports digestion, keeping materials moving through the digestive tract. It enables kidney function, allowing waste elimination. It helps regulate body temperature, particularly important as temperature regulation becomes less efficient with age. The sensation of thirst diminishes with age, a physiological change that leaves many older adults mildly dehydrated without realizing it. By the time thirst registers, dehydration has already begun affecting function. Relying on thirst as a hydration guide becomes less reliable over time. The alternative is regular fluid intake regardless of perceived thirst. 6 to 8 cups daily, spread across waking hours, maintains hydration for most people. During winter, warm fluids offer advantages over cold. They provide hydration without chilling the body, and they encourage sipping rather than gulping, which spreads intake across time. Herbal teas, warm water with lemon, broths, and diluted fruit juices all contribute to fluid intake while offering variety. The goal is consistent hydration, not any particular beverage. Part 4. The emotional dimension of physical health. The body reads the mind. For much of medical history, physical and emotional health were treated as separate domains. Physicians studied organs and tissues. Psychologists studied thoughts and feelings. The two rarely met in clinical practice or research. Modern understanding has eroded this division. We now recognize that emotional states produce measurable physical changes. The body responds to thoughts and feelings with hormonal shifts, cardiovascular adjustments, immune modifications, changes that accumulate over time into patterns that influence health. The pathways connecting emotion and physical health operate through multiple systems. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline prepare the body for challenge by increasing heart rate, elevating blood pressure, and mobilizing energy stores. These responses serve survival when genuine threats arise. But when they activate chronically, in response to ongoing worry, frustration, or anger, they create sustained demand on systems designed for intermittent use. The cardiovascular system proves particularly sensitive to emotional states. Blood vessels constrict under stress, adding to any constriction already present from cold or other factors. Heart rate increases. Blood becomes slightly more prone to clotting. These changes, brief and adaptive in isolation, become problematic when repeated frequently. Cold weather and emotional vulnerability. Winter presents specific emotional challenges that interact with physical vulnerability. Reduced daylight alters neurotransmitter regulation, serotonin, which influences mood, and melatonin, which governs sleep. Both respond to light exposure. For some individuals, these changes produce noticeable mood shifts. Social patterns change in cold weather. Outdoor activities decrease. Visits with friends and family may become less frequent. The natural social contact that occurs during warm months, neighbors met while walking, conversations in parks, casual gatherings, diminishes. Isolation increases, sometimes imperceptibly. Physical discomfort from cold can lower the threshold for irritation. Small frustrations that would pass unnoticed in comfort become sources of genuine annoyance when the body is already slightly uncomfortable. Arguments arise more easily. Patience diminishes. These factors combine to create conditions where emotional regulation requires more effort than during other seasons. The reserves that normally manage frustration become depleted. The systems that maintain equilibrium work harder. Practical approaches to emotional balance. Managing emotional responses during vulnerable periods does not require eliminating difficult feelings, but rather developing tools for responding to them constructively. Pausing between feeling and action creates space for choice. When frustration rises, a deliberate pause, even a few seconds, interrupts the automatic progression from emotion to reaction. During this pause, the initial intensity often subsides slightly, allowing clearer thinking about how to respond. Breathing deliberately during this pause amplifies its effect. Slow, deep breaths activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch that promotes calm and recovery. Heart rate slows slightly. Blood pressure begins to normalize. The physical grip of emotion loosens. Naming the emotion engages cognitive processes that can moderate emotional intensity. Simply acknowledging, "I am feeling angry," or "this is frustration," creates a small separation between the experience of the emotion and the sense of self. The emotion becomes something being experienced rather than something that defines the moment. Choosing response rather than reacting automatically preserves agency. The choice might be to address the situation directly, to postpone discussion until calmer, to seek perspective from someone trusted, or simply to let the matter pass. What matters is that the response reflects choice rather than reflex. Preventive practices throughout the day build emotional reserves that make regulation easier when challenges arise. Regular movement, adequate rest, pleasant activities, and social connection all support emotional stability. These practices do not prevent difficult feelings, but make them more manageable when they occur. Part 5. The restorative role of sleep. Sleep as active maintenance. Popular understanding often treats sleep as a passive state, a period when consciousness switches off and nothing much happens. This view could hardly be more mistaken. Sleep is a time of intense biological activity during which the body performs essential maintenance that cannot occur during waking hours. During deep sleep, the brain activates its glymphatic system, a recently discovered network that flushes waste products from neural tissue. This cleaning process removes metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking brain activity, including proteins associated with neurodegenerative conditions. The brain literally washes itself during sleep. During sleep, the body repairs tissues damaged during daily activity. Growth hormone, released primarily during deep sleep, stimulates tissue repair and muscle maintenance. Immune cells proliferate, preparing to defend against pathogens. The cardiovascular system operates at reduced demand, allowing recovery from daytime stresses. Memory consolidation occurs during sleep, with the brain replaying and strengthening neural patterns formed during learning. Information moves from temporary storage to more permanent memory systems. Skills practiced during the day become more automatic. Given these essential functions, it is not surprising that sleep quality correlates with virtually every measure of health. Poor sleep predicts increased cardiovascular events, impaired immune function, cognitive decline, metabolic dysregulation, and emotional instability. Good sleep predicts the opposite. The significance of sleep position. Among the factors affecting sleep quality, position receives less attention than it deserves. Yet how we position ourselves during those hours of unconsciousness influences which tissues rest and which remain under strain. When we lie down, gravity's pull on the body changes from its daytime vertical orientation. Fluids redistribute. The spine unloads weight it has carried all day. Organs shift slightly within the body cavity. The position we choose shapes how these redistributions occur. Side sleeping, properly supported, offers numerous advantages. This position maintains the spine in a relatively neutral alignment, particularly when the head pillow fills the space between shoulder and mattress without tilting the neck. The airway remains open, reducing snoring and sleep-disordered breathing. For those with acid reflux, left side sleeping positions the stomach below the esophagus, reducing the chance of stomach contents flowing backward. The potential drawback of side sleeping lies in shoulder and arm positioning. When the arm beneath the body extends straight out, it can compress nerves and restrict blood flow. Morning numbness or tingling often results. Positioning the arm forward, slightly bent, reduces this compression. A pillow between the knees prevents the upper leg from rotating the pelvis. Back sleeping provides the most even weight distribution across the body's posterior surface. No single joint bears disproportionate pressure. The spine can rest in its natural curves when properly supported. The face remains free of pillow pressure that might contribute to wrinkles or skin issues. The challenge with back sleeping lies in maintaining proper support. A pillow that is too high forces the chin toward the chest, straining neck structures. A pillow that is too low allows the head to drop back, creating different strain patterns. A small support beneath the knees maintains the lower back slight arch, preventing the flat back position that can cause discomfort. For individuals with sleep apnea or heavy snoring, back sleeping may worsen these conditions as the tongue and soft palate can fall backward, obstructing the airway. Side sleeping typically proves preferable in these cases. Stomach sleeping presents the most challenges for healthy alignment. The head must turn to one side for breathing, twisting the neck throughout the night. The lower back may arch excessively as the body seeks position. Pressure on the chest restricts lung expansion slightly. The eyes may press against the pillow, potentially increasing intraocular pressure over time. For those who find stomach sleeping most comfortable, modifying the position can reduce its drawbacks. Using a very thin pillow or none at all reduces neck twist by keeping the head closer to the mattress. Placing a thin pillow under the hips can reduce lower back arch. These modifications do not eliminate all concerns, but improve upon unmodified stomach sleeping. Arm and hand positioning. The position of arms and hands during sleep affects nerves and blood vessels that run through these structures. Prolonged compression or stretching can cause symptoms that persist into waking hours. Sleeping with arms raised overhead places sustained stretch on nerves that run from the neck through the shoulder and down the arm. For some individuals, this stretch irritates these nerves, causing numbness, tingling, or weakness that appears during sleep and may persist upon waking. Sleeping with hands tucked under the head or pillow compresses the soft tissues of the wrist and hand against the hard surface of the skull or pillow. This compression can affect both nerves and blood vessels, particularly the ulnar nerve on the inner side of the arm. Morning numbness in the ring and little fingers often reflects this compression. The preferable position keeps arms relatively neutral at the sides for back sleepers, slightly forward for side sleepers, with wrists and hands relaxed rather than bent or clenched. This neutral position minimizes both compression and stretch, allowing nerves and vessels to rest undisturbed. The sleep environment. Beyond position, the environment in which sleep occurs significantly affects its quality and restorative value. Temperature influences sleep through multiple pathways. The body's core temperature naturally drops during sleep, a drop that facilitates sleep onset and maintenance. A sleeping environment that is too warm interferes with this natural cooling, fragmenting sleep and reducing deep sleep duration. Most sleep research suggests bedroom temperatures between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit support optimal sleep. Darkness matters because light exposure, particularly blue light, suppresses melatonin production. Even small amounts of light reaching the eyes can affect sleep quality. Blackout curtains, eye masks, and eliminating light-emitting devices from the bedroom all support the darkness that sleep requires. Quiet allows sleep to continue uninterrupted. For those in noisy environments, white noise machines or fans can mask disruptive sounds by providing consistent background sound that the brain learns to ignore. Air quality affects breathing throughout the night. Stuffy, dry air can irritate airways, causing coughing or discomfort that fragments sleep. Adequate ventilation and in dry climates or seasons, humidification can maintain air quality that supports uninterrupted breathing. Bedding choices affect both comfort and temperature regulation. Natural fibers like cotton and wool breathe better than synthetics, reducing the risk of overheating. Multiple layers allow adjustment during the night as temperature preferences change. Part 6. Patterns that emerge across healthy populations. Observations from long-lived communities. Researchers studying populations with unusually high numbers of healthy older adults have noted patterns that recur across different cultures and geographic regions. These observations do not prove causation. Correlation is not causation, but they suggest directions worth considering. Movement embedded in daily life characterizes these populations. People do not set aside time for exercise. They simply live in ways that require regular movement. They walk to destinations. They garden. They perform manual tasks without mechanical assistance. Movement is not a separate activity, but woven into the fabric of ordinary days. Plant-forward eating appears consistently. Meals center on vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and fruits. Meat appears occasionally rather than daily, often in small portions. Processed foods occupy minimal space in the diet. Meals are prepared from basic ingredients rather than assembled from manufactured components. Social connection maintains throughout life. Older adults remain integrated into community life, not segregated by age. Multiple generations interact regularly. Friendships persist and new ones form. People have people, someone to talk with, someone to help, someone who needs them. Purpose persists beyond paid work. People have reasons to get up in the morning, roles that matter, contributions that others value, activities that engage their abilities. This purpose may come from family, from community involvement, from creative pursuits, from continued learning. What matters is its presence. Moderation in all things characterizes these populations. They eat, drink, work, and rest in balanced measure. Neither asceticism nor excess defines their relationship with pleasure. They enjoy life's offerings without becoming enslaved to them. The role of consistency. What stands out in these observations is not dramatic intensity, but quiet consistency. People do not exercise vigorously, they move regularly. They do not follow restrictive diets. They eat simply and moderately. They do not pursue peak experiences constantly. They maintain steady connection with life's ordinary satisfactions. Consistency operates through accumulation. A single walk changes nothing. 1,000 walks reshape capacity. One healthy meal passes through the system. Years of healthy meals reshape metabolism. A single day of purpose matters little. Decades of purpose shape identity and meaning. This principle offers encouragement to those who find dramatic change overwhelming. The goal is not perfection, but direction. Small choices repeated until they become automatic. Modest improvements that compound across time. The person who walks 10 minutes daily for decades will have walked thousands of hours, regardless of whether any single walk felt significant. Integration across domains. The various domains discussed in this essay: movement, nutrition, emotional regulation, rest, do not operate independently. They interact continuously, each influencing the others. Movement affects sleep quality. People who move regularly during the day typically sleep more deeply at night. Sleep affects emotional regulation. Well-rested individuals respond to frustration with more patience than those who are sleep-deprived. Emotional state affects food choices. Stress often drives cravings for precisely the foods that undermine long-term health. Food choices affect energy for movement. Nutritious meals provide sustained fuel, while poor choices create energy fluctuations. These interactions mean that improvements in any domain tend to support improvements in others. A person who begins moving more may find sleep improving naturally, without directly addressing sleep. Better sleep may make emotional regulation easier, reducing stress-driven eating. Better nutrition may provide energy for more movement. The system, once nudged in a positive direction, tends to support its own momentum. This also means that challenges in one domain can cascade through others. Poor sleep degrades emotional regulation, which affects food choices, which reduces energy for movement, which further impairs sleep. The same interactions that create positive momentum can also amplify difficulties. Part 7. Practical integration for daily life. Starting where you are. For those considering how to apply these principles, the first step involves accepting current circumstances as the starting point. Not the circumstances you wish you had. Not the circumstances you used to have. The circumstances that exist today. This acceptance matters because change efforts that begin from self-criticism rarely sustain. The energy behind them comes from dissatisfaction, which fades as soon as the immediate goal is met. Change that grows from self-awareness, clear-eyed recognition of where you are, and honest desire for something different, draws on deeper resources. Consider your current movement patterns, not compared to some ideal, but as they actually exist. How much of your day involves sitting? How much involves standing and walking? When you move, what does that movement look like? This assessment provides baseline information without judgment. Consider your current eating patterns. What do your meals typically include? How do they vary across days and seasons? When do you eat? And under what circumstances? What role does food play beyond nourishment, comfort, celebration, distraction? Consider your current sleep patterns. How long do you typically sleep? How restful does that sleep feel? What position do you assume? What does your sleep environment look and feel like? Consider your current emotional patterns. What situations most consistently trigger frustration or anger? How do you typically respond? What resources do you have for restoring balance when emotions run high? This inventory is not for comparison with others, but for self-understanding. It establishes where change efforts might most usefully begin. Choosing initial focus. From this understanding, the next step involves choosing one area for initial attention. Not all areas simultaneously. That approach reliably overwhelms and then collapses. One area, one small change, sustained until it becomes automatic. The area chosen might be the one where success seems most achievable. A person who already walks occasionally might aim for slightly more consistency. Someone who already eats vegetables at dinner might add them to lunch. Someone who already sleeps reasonably well might adjust pillow height for better alignment. Or the area might be the one where small changes could produce noticeable effects. A person whose sleep clearly suffers from poor positioning might address that first, knowing that better sleep will support everything else. Someone whose emotional reactivity clearly relates to stress might begin there. The specific change matters less than the commitment to consistency. A small change maintained for months accomplishes more than a dramatic change abandoned after weeks. Building through layering. Once initial changes become habitual, no longer requiring conscious effort to maintain, additional changes can layer onto them. This gradual accumulation builds sustainable patterns without overwhelming willpower or attention. The person who established a morning stretch routine might add an afternoon walk break. The person who improved pillow support might address room temperature. The person who added vegetables at lunch might consider protein distribution across meals. Each layer builds on the foundation of previous layers. The accumulated practices begin supporting each other, creating the positive interactions described earlier. The system gains momentum in a favorable direction, adapting to changing circumstances. Life does not stand still while we build healthy patterns. Circumstances change. Seasons turn. Health fluctuates. Responsibilities shift. Any sustainable approach must accommodate this constant change. Winter presents different movement opportunities than summer. Illness temporarily reduces capacity for activity. Travel disrupts routines. Family needs demand time and attention. These variations are not failures, but normal aspects of living. The sustainable approach flexes with circumstances. When outdoor walking isn't possible, indoor movement substitutes. When full routines aren't feasible, modified versions maintain connection with healthy patterns. When life demands attention, practices contract temporarily, then expand when circumstances allow. The goal is not rigid adherence to fixed routines, but ongoing engagement with healthy principles, adapted to current realities. Part 8. The deeper context of health practices. Beyond individual control. Any honest discussion of health must acknowledge the limits of individual control. Genetics influence trajectories. Early life conditions shape development. Access to resources varies enormously. Environmental exposures differ. Random events redirect paths. These factors matter. They create the context within which individual choices operate. Two people making identical choices may experience different outcomes because their starting points differ, because their environments differ, because chance intervenes. Acknowledging these limits serves two purposes. It prevents the simplistic conclusion that health outcomes reflect only personal virtue or failure. And it clarifies the actual territory of influence, not total control, but meaningful influence within constraints. The purpose of health practices, given these limits. Why engage in health practices at all, if outcomes are not guaranteed? If genetics and environment and chance all play roles, what justifies the effort? The answer lies in shifting probabilities, not guaranteeing outcomes. Health practices do not ensure any particular result, but they make favorable outcomes more likely and unfavorable outcomes less likely. They create conditions in which the body has better resources for meeting challenges. They tilt the odds. This probabilistic view changes how we evaluate health practices. Success is not measured by perfect outcomes, but by faithful engagement with practices that research suggests support health. The person who moves regularly, eats thoughtfully, rests adequately, and regulates emotions has done what can reasonably be done, regardless of what ultimately unfolds. The intrinsic value of present well-being, beyond future outcomes. Health practices affect present experience. Movement, beyond its long-term benefits, feels good in the moment. The pleasant sensation of muscles working, the clarity that follows physical activity, the satisfaction of using the body as designed. Thoughtful eating, beyond its nutritional effects, provides immediate pleasure, the taste of well-prepared food, the comfort of a nourishing meal, the social connection that often accompanies eating together. Adequate rest, beyond its restorative functions, simply feels better than fatigue, the difference between moving through the day with energy versus dragging through it exhausted. Emotional regulation, beyond its cardiovascular effects, makes daily life more pleasant, fewer arguments, less internal turmoil, more capacity for enjoying what each day offers. These immediate benefits matter independently of any long-term outcomes. They make the practices worth doing for their own sake, regardless of what they may or may not contribute decades hence. Conclusion: the steady work of living well. The architecture of aging well does not rest on any single foundation. It emerges from thousands of small decisions repeated across decades, decisions about how to move, what to eat, when to rest, how to respond to difficulty, who to spend time with, what to care about. These decisions do not determine our fate. Genetics, environment, and chance all play their roles, but they influence its direction. They shift probabilities. They create conditions in which health is more likely to flourish and less likely to falter. The practices described in this essay: regular movement throughout the day, thoughtful food choices, attention to hydration, emotional regulation, proper sleep positioning, a supportive sleep environment, represent what research and observation suggest about patterns that support long-term well-being. They are not rules to be followed rigidly, but principles to be adapted to individual circumstances. For those in midlife and beyond, these practices offer something beyond health maintenance. They offer engagement with life, with the body that carries us through days, with the food that nourishes us, with the rest that restores us, with the emotions that color our experience. They remind us that how we live matters, not only for how long we live, but for how fully we inhabit whatever years we have. The work is steady, not dramatic. It proceeds day by day, choice by choice, without guarantees, but with reasonable hope. It is the quiet work of living well, and it is available to anyone who chooses to undertake it. The architecture of aging well does not rest on any single foundation. It emerges from thousands of small decisions repeated across decades, decisions about how to move, what to eat, when to rest, how to respond to difficulty, who to spend time with, what to care about. These decisions do not determine our fate, but they influence its direction. They shift probabilities. They create conditions in which health is more likely to flourish. And they offer something beyond health maintenance. They offer engagement with life itself, with the body that carries us through days, with the food that nourishes us, with the rest that restores us, with the emotions that color our experience. If these reflections have stirred something in you, we would be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments, what you've observed in your own life, what questions remain, what wisdom you would add to this archive. And if you would like to explore more of what we've gathered here, we invite you to browse the library. There is always more to discover. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.